Picture it. Floor-mounted dimmer switches, rear-hinged doors, vent window for ventilation. Remember when a car was considered incomplete without all of these? The evolution of vehicles has successfully excluded so many features that seem crucial for a car to function decently and safely. If we compare a modern car with a vehicle from the early 1900s, so many new additions can be observed. But besides that, we'll also notice a dozen features that don't exist anymore. So what are the features that aren't a part of cars anymore? Why did they get removed? How important were they? All of this and so much more in today's video. So without further ado, let's get started. Number 5. Floor-mounted dimmer switches. When it comes to setting the mood inside a car, the floor-mounted dimmer switches were everything a driver needed to get stuff done. From adjusting the temperature to making the lights less and more dim, from checking the battery to the fuel capacity, the floor-mounted switches were responsible for the majority of the control over a car's interior and vitals. Before the fancy, over-the-top, and high-tech entertainment centuries were a thing, our fathers and grandfathers used to rely on the good old-fashioned control system that was installed in the car's flooring. In fact, the floor-mounted switches could even control the lighting connected to the speedometer and the headlights. But imagine telling a car owner from the early 1900s that they don't exist anymore. Instead, now that everything is digitalized, the latest cars have touch-sensitive controls to make sure the ambiance inside the car is according to the driver's taste. Not only that, but the speedometer, headlights, and fuel capacity are also monitored by modern updates that were recently added to vehicles. Number 4. Rear-hinged doors. As cool as you might think they are, rear-hinged doors were dangerous to everyone in a car. In earlier times, car manufacturers liked to get their inspiration from royal carriages that were used only by the wealthiest. So when technology started to replace these carriages and cars coming to the market, they decided to copy the door style of carriages and add rear-hinged doors in cars. As awesome as that might look to us now, falling out of a moving vehicle was a very valid concern and an actual problem, especially for the Subaru 360 in 1969. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. So if you have anxiety or have already imagined a scenario where you're falling out of a moving vehicle thanks to your overthinking tendencies, congratulations! You weren't entirely wrong, and this concern was very valid and real in older vehicles with rear-hinged doors. In fact, that's the reason why these doors are also called suicide doors. But with the passage of time, and especially with the publishing of Unsafe at Any Speed, The Dangers of the American Automobile published by Ralph in the 1960s, the government was forced to take relevant steps and make sure that this danger was addressed and taken care of appropriately. However, these car doors did have a lot of advantages for a certain demographic. For the people who wore heavy dresses or were extra conscious about their dress getting ruined by twisting and turning to the seat of the back seat, the rear-hinged doors were a great blessing. But is wrinkle-free clothing worth the risk of falling from a running car? Yeah, I didn't think so. And the worst part about the cars that had these unique doors, they didn't have straps or seatbelts either, so the risk of falling out the car was maximized exponentially. But not anymore, because the last vehicle that had rear-hinged doors was the Toyota Tundra that released in 2002. So safe to say that the dangers are not there anymore and your car rides have become a lot safer. Number 3. Full-size spare tires. If you tell a car owner from the earlier times that vehicles these days don't come with a full-size spare tire, you might get a weird look and a suggestion that you got scammed. Back in the time, getting a full-size tire with whatever car you purchased was essential, but not anymore though. There are 2 reasons for this, the car size and the tire size. Let's talk about the first reason. The cars that have changed when it comes to space and design. The vehicles these days are more compact and are designed to fit more passengers instead of spare parts, if they're not small and it's just the manufacturers prioritizing seating space over cargo space. For example, the 1973 Nova would be considered a mid-sized vehicle by modern standards, however, it was considered not that huge by the standards of its release time. And the Toyota Corolla, definitely a small car if we look at it from old standards regarding car size. The second thing was that the car sizes weren't the only thing that changed. These days, cars have bigger tires that need a lot more space than the old tires used to, and when the design scheme of the vehicles focused more on accommodating passengers instead of general cargo space, throwing in a full-size spare tire seemed to be a bad idea. 17 and 18-inch tires have become the norm, and even for economy cars, 16-inch tires are essential and nothing out of the ordinary. However, instead of giving full-size spare tires, manufacturers throw in a limited-use spare tire, instead of which takes up less space. It's cost-friendly and doesn't affect the total weight of the vehicle as much as the full-size tire does. These tires are also called donuts, space savers, or compact spare tires. Another alternative instead of getting the full-size spare tires is the tire inflator kit. Not only are they helpful, but also are useful in the long term. Several kinds of tire damage can be handled through these handy-dandy kits. But remember, not all damages can be fixed by them, and if the situation gets out of hand, a visit to the mechanic is inevitable and probably the best for your vehicle. However, full-size spare tires were very important and helpful indeed, and the consumers would be more than happy to have this feature back. Number 2. Vent window for ventilation. Back when global warming wasn't that much of a concern and the Earth wasn't as destroyed as it is today, not a lot of cars had air conditioning. In fact, if it felt too hot, they just cracked the window open and there you go, the weather's pleasant inside the car again. In fact, just for the purpose of ventilation, there was a triangular piece of glass next to the actual window that was movable. Whenever you felt hot or suffocated, all you had to do was move it a little and there you go, everything was better again. But not anymore. In this age where the ozone layer is the most damaged it has ever been, the temperatures are at an all-time high, and driving a vehicle without a built-in air conditioning system is a health hazard. But how can air conditioning work if the vent window is there, leaking out all the cooling? To tackle that problem, the manufacturers removed the vent window for ventilation so that the air conditioners could work optimally and no cooling was wasted. Another reason behind the vent windows going extinct in the newer car models was fuel efficiency. Due to the inefficient cooling, it took a lot more time for air conditioners to improve the car's temperature, which resulted in a lot more fuel being used up than necessary. Nowadays, due to lack of a vent window, the driver can just crank up the air conditioner, and the cooling can be done a lot more faster and efficiently, and less fuel gets used. Number 1. Bench seats. For the folks that aren't a part of Gen Z, do you remember how the seats in your grandpa's car used to kind of a smaller than the ones that cars have these days? Very comfortable, but at the same time, very differently shaped. Those seats were called bench seats and were a lot more economical and made it easier to accommodate more passengers. Another interesting aspect about the older bench seats was that they had no seatbelts and were perfectly safe for slower highway speeds. You might be shocked to know that the biggest reason behind the upgrade of the bench seats of cars was World War II. After the Second World War, European influence was clearly seen in American vehicles as a huge amount of European sports cars were either imported by the United States or copied by their American competitors. And that's because of their single-seat design in sports cars. A lot of American cars also started to make their seats different instead of the good old bench seats. In an interview with the Vice President of Production Engineering at General Motors, Jim Queen stated, "The customers seem to have decided the issue. The reason we dropped bench seats was that the demand had dropped. If you tried to go back to bench seats, people would complain. They prefer bucket seats and split benches." Another big reason behind the update was the installation of airbags, which provide better protection to the 2 front passengers instead of 3. So, just like several other things, bench seats went extinct in the world of vehicles in exchange for more comfort and safety of the passengers. With that being said, that's all for today, folks. What extinct feature do you want to see in modern cars again? Tell us in the comment section down below. We'll be back soon. Until then, take care.